Hello, cyber warriors, and welcome to AstralGuard Cyber Academy. My name is Mohsin, and today we're going to see how just one careless line of code can compromise an entire system. And we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to exploit the lab live here so you can have a better understanding of what broken authentication is. So before we get started, I want you to drop in the comment section if you are really ready to break into this lab with me. So here's the game plan for today. We need to understand what authentication is. We need to look at some real examples of how it works in the real world and see how developers accidentally break it. We need to exploit the lab and see how the vulnerability is really exploited. And finally, we need to learn how to fix it so you never make the mistake. So these are the session goals. By the end of this session, you will understand what authentication is. You will understand what broken authentication is. You will see how the OR operator leads to bypass. You will learn the dangers of hard-coded credentials. You will learn how to bypass weak authentications. And lastly, you will learn how to protect yourself and applications. What is authentication? Authentication is basically the system asking you to prove if you are who you claim to be. Simple. The system is trying to ask you to prove if you're really who you are. If you're really who you claim to be. So I want you to think of it like a bouncer outside a club. They check your ID before they let you in. So it's almost the same thing in tech. In tech terms, it's the process of verifying that a system entity, whether a person or a device, it could be even a process, has the right identity. So I want you to tell me in the comment section, what is the most annoying authentication check you've ever done? For me, it's the select all the traffic lights captures. They are nightmares. I don't like them for real. So let's see some common authentication methods. One, we have knowledge-based authentication. So this is something you know, like a password, PIN, or a security question. You simply need to know the password, you need to know your PIN, and the security question you say, and the answer as well. So it's knowledge-based. You need to have the knowledge about the password, PIN, or security question. Then secondly, we have ownership-based authentication. This is all about something you have, like a smart card or hardware token or OTP code from Google Authenticator. Simply like you provide the proof. So that is ownership-based authentication. Then the last one is inheritance-based authentication. So this is something you're like your fingerprint or face. It has to do with things like iris or retina scans, voice recognition, fingerprints, and facial recognition. So we've seen what authentication is. Then what is broken authentication? So when we talk about broken authentication, it happens when the verification process has a flow that allows attackers to get in or access a system without the right credentials. Maybe the password is weak, maybe the sessions aren't handled properly, or maybe like today a developer forgot the secret key hard-coded in the code. So those are some of the causes how the broken authentication happens. So we need to see some of the causes of broken authentication. Just we saw in the previous slide, we have with passwords, we have hard-coded credentials, and session mishandling. So what are some of the risks of broken authentication? One of the risks of broken authentication is unauthorized access, privilege escalation, and data breaches. So we're going to exploit our lab. We're going to do it practically and see how broken authentications are exploited and how they really work. So before we do that, we need to see what the vulnerable code snippet is in our code. So we are going to exploit a login page that has this kind of vulnerability, and it actually has this very code in the backend. So this is the vulnerable code snippet in our lab. So when you look at this statement, it says if the username is hacker01 or the password is hacker01, then bypass authentication returns access. What does this mean? I'm pretty sure if you know something about coding programming, you already know where the problem is. But for you who do not know, never mind. I'm going to show you why. So this is the problem. Actually, the problem is all about this particular operator. So this is the same as the OR operator. So what does this mean? This only needs one condition to be right for you to bypass authentication. In other words, it means if you give me the right password, I don't care about the username. Or if you give me the right username, I don't care about the password. You will gain access. So this is what this operator does. It only needs just one condition to be true so you can gain access to the system. So this is what exactly makes the whole system broken, like vulnerable. The whole thing looks good, yeah, because there is password check, but because of this, the whole system is broken. Because if you happen to get one of the two right, maybe you get the right password and you don't know the username, you're gonna get access. Or if you get the right username and you don't know the password, still same thing, you're gonna get access. So let's go to our lab and see how this is done practically. So by the way, if you've not yet joined AstralGuard Cyber Academy, you're missing out a lot. So this is the lab. There's a lot of labs, so many levels. So if you've not yet joined AstralGuard Cyber Academy, trust me, you're missing out a lot of things, because I can see labs from beginners where we have things like broken authentication, hard-coded pipers. I can see this one is not accessible right now. It's broken authentication, loose comparison. We have things like brute force, no local. We have HTML injection. We have things like clickjacking, CSR F-gate, and we have reflected SSS. It's a lot of stuff. We have remote code execution. This is pretty interesting. Okay, let's go to our lab. So this is our lab. Actually, yeah, it is broken authentication hard-coded bypass, and it's right here. So right in front of us, we have a login page that we need to bypass. We already have knowledge that this particular page is vulnerable to hard coding, but we're unable to access the backend code. We can't see it, but we already saw it, and we remember how the code looks like. There is a hard-coded password. Apart from that, the code, the logic is very weak. It only checks for one thing. I mean, it only needs one condition to be true. For example, if you provide the right username and the wrong override key, you're gonna get access. Or even when you get the right override key and you have a wrong username, you're gonna get access. So let's first try out with some of the common passwords we know. For example, admin. In the username, I'm going to write admin, and in the override key, so this should not confuse you. The user ID is same as name, and the override key is the same as the password. So you may hear the override key and you'll be like, what am I going to get the override key? So this is just a word. They mean the password. So override key, we're going to try something like 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let's try to log in and see. Verifying credentials. access denied, so we can't get in. It means the credentials are not right. So let's try something else. Still the same user ID. Let's just change the override key to something else, like some of the common passwords are admin 1234. Let's log in. See, access denied, so we can't still log in. Okay, let's try something else. Let's change the user ID. Maybe let's try something like what can we try out? Let's try something like maybe instructor, and then put in a password or override key, something like let's try something like maybe it could be, you never know, since this is AstralGuard Cyber Academy, maybe they use AstralGuard 1234. Access denied, so we do not know the password. Well, we've seen that this page actually it checks for the right password, despite the fact that the credentials are hard-coded. It means if you have no access to the backend code, you may not know that there is hard coding. Yeah, of course you may not, you'll not know, you'll never know. So, but because we had access, we already saw that it is hard coded, and we already saw the password and the username, and we understood it has a vulnerability whereby it needs only one thing to be right, only one condition to be right, either like the username or override key. So let's try this out. User ID. Let's try out what we saw in the code is. Let's go back to. So let's go back and see if username is hacker01, that means this is the username, or if the password is hacker01, so the username and the password are the same. So this is the password, I mean the username, and this is the password. So let's go and try it out in our code and see. It is hacker01. Let's try to log in without the override key and see the page view. So we can't really log in. Let's put any random thing and see. Access granted. We've been able to gain access to the system. So what did you notice? We used the right override, I mean user ID, or the right username and any random password, but we gained access. So this clearly explains the vulnerability that we saw in the vulnerable code right here. Let me show you. This explains this exactly, because this, like I told you before, we only need one condition to be true. This is what exactly we did here. We only had the right user ID and a fake password, but we managed to get access to the system. Alright, so what if we remove this, we cut it, and come over here, and now in the previous time we used the right user ID and the wrong override key. So let's reciprocate the thing, and maybe right now let's use the right override key, which is hacker. Let me just type it. It's hacker01 and any random user ID. So let's try to initiate secrets. Boom. Still we gain access. So this clearly explains what we saw in this particular code. This explains what I explained, because in the previous, first we had to use the right username and the wrong password. We were able to get to the system. Then again, we had to use the correct password and the wrong username, but still we were able to log in. So this explains this operator. It only checks, I mean, like, it needs only one condition to be true, So let's just go back to our lab and see. So we've seen that when you log in with the right username and the wrong override key, you get access. And when you log in with the wrong username, right override key, still gain access. That explains today's session, broken authentication and coded bypass. So there is a lot of vulnerabilities in this particular code. One of them, there is hard coding. Imagine if like somebody, a malicious actor, like could be a hacker or somebody else, gains access to this particular code. They already know the password and the username. Again, maybe they can brute force. It means if they happen to get maybe the username and they get the wrong password, still they gain access to the system. So this is a super critical vulnerability. So that's how we really exploit this. So you are wondering, like, how would I ever know if I never had like access? So I'm posing this question to you. Just know there is a lot and many ways how you can know that this is vulnerable. But I'm posing this question to you, and if you cannot figure out the answer, please contact me and I'm gonna show you how. So let's go back over here. So we've seen the lab scenario and we need to know why this is so dangerous. Why is this dangerous anyway? It's because the OR operator means that the attacker needs only one value right. We saw that. So we need to see the real world examples whereby had coded credentials where as a result maybe they caused breaches or hacks. So one of the scenarios is the Juniper Networks in 2015 file backdoor. You're gonna have to read about this, you'll find out more about this. Then we even have the Tesla 2019 cloud hack where they had coded credentials and the IoT devices mirror botnet takeover. Then what are the lessons for different roles? If you're an ethical hacker and you need to learn how to identify and responsibly report. If you're a developer, the advice is never hard code secrets. And if you're a security pro, you need to monitor and use your login patterns. So how to prevent it? Use and instead of or. You need to use the and operator instead of the or. Because the and, all the conditions need to be true. What does it mean? You have to put the right, the password should match what is there, and also the username, which is different with the OR operator. Then we need to remove hard-coded credentials. If actually you're like a programmer, you're a developer, you do not need to do a hard coding. You need to use environmental variables or any other thing, but you do not need hard code credentials. And you need to implement MFA or multi-factor authentication and rate limit. So lastly, just like I said before, you need to store secrets securely in environmental variables. So thank you for watching. This is AstralGuard Cyber Academy. Please, there is a lot of labs. You need to just register with AstralGuard Cyber Academy, and it's gonna be fun for you. Students are busy learning out there, so you need to join the crew. Thank you for watching. See you in the next session. And in the next session, we're gonna look at broken authentication with comparison.